Hi, good afternoon. This presentation is to review some of the proposed changes for the 2020 IDO annual update, citywide text amendments. This section of the presentation will cover any and all changes to the definitions of the IDO. We will begin with the definitions on page 505. This is all part 7.1 of definitions, acronyms, and abbreviations. First change here shown is accessory structure, and to read along, this is the definition of accessory structure. The proposed change would be to delete the word swimming pools and adding new sentence as follows: above ground swimming pools are not considered accessory structures for the purposes of this IDO. The explanation of the change is that in-ground swimming pools may encroach up to 5 feet into a required setback. Above ground swimming pools are not regulated by the zoning code. Those are regulated by the building code, and as temporary structures do not have to meet the full required setbacks. The next change is on page 509 of the IDO, and this is a revision to the term building, which is down the very last one at the bottom of the page. The proposed change is to add a second sentence, add to the end of the second sentence. Unless specified otherwise in this IDO, this term refers to anything within the footprint of a common roof, including but not limited to a porch, breezeway, or carport. And the justification for this change is that it provides more specificity about what counts if a building is under a common roof. The next change to the IDO is on page 510. This is the term in the group of terms building frontage types, and it is the first definition for arcade. What needs to be changed is where it says the street facing facade with an attached colonnade or overhang structure to create a covered passageway. The purpose of this change is that it broadens the definition to also include structures that have an arcade overhang but don't have columns. The definition of an arcade is that it does have columns, but recently there have been several buildings proposed that create a similar form and sense of enclosure above the sidewalk, but do not have columns. And that's something that's good because it's less of a pedestrian obstruction, and it allows more of the sidewalk to be occupied for pedestrians and other street furniture that may be desired. The next change is on page 512, and this is a revision to the category called cannabis definitions. This would add a new term for cannabis, and it would read, as defined in NMSA 1978, section 734.47. For the purposes of this IDO, hemp is not regulated as cannabis. See also hemp. And the reason for this change is to add a definition for a term that is used in the IDO, and it refers to the state's regulations without creating any new regulatory content, but adds more consistency with the way that the state regulates things, and it also makes it more clear that hemp is not considered cannabis. The next change is to the same category, and it is to add a new definition for the term cannabis-derived products. The definition would read, a product other than cannabis itself that contains or is derived from cannabis, as regulated by NMSA 1979, section 734.47. See also hemp. Throughout the IDO, replace the term cannabis infused with the new term cannabis derived wherever it appears. The purpose of the change is to add a definition for a term that's proposed to be added to the IDO. See the regulated item for a new cannabis definition. This definition refers to state regulations. Again, to the same section on page 512, this would be to add a new term for hemp. It would read as follows: as defined by NMSA 1978, section 20.10.27. For the purposes of this IDO, hemp is not regulated as cannabis. See also cannabis. And the purpose of this change is to add a definition for a term that's proposed to be added in the IDO. See also the other revisions to this cannabis definition section. This definition refers to the state's regulations. Hemp is used in a wide variety of products, including rope, clothing, and other items. This definition makes it clear that hemp products would not be regulated the same way as cannabis retail is in the IDO. The next change is to the term calendar, calendar days. Okay, that's actually on page 511 at the very bottom. This would be revised to add a new second sentence that reads as follows: where this IDO refers to a period of multiple months or a period of 1 or more years, the final date of the period would fall on the corresponding date of the month in the future, i.e., if the period starts on May 18th, a 3-month period would end on August 18th. A 1-year period would end on May 18th of the following year. The purpose of this change is to clarify how the city measures calendar days, and this is consistent with the way that current practice sets deadlines and expirations of approvals. The next change to the definition section is on page 517. And this is to the term in the category of development definitions. The new word is infill development, or I'm sorry, the word to be revised. This term is to be revised to read an area of platted or unplatted land that includes no more than 20 acres of land, and the new text is that has water and sewer service, and where at least 75% of the parcels adjacent to the proposed development have been developed and contain existing primary buildings. The purpose of this change is to revise the city's term to be more consistent with the mid-region metropolitan planning organization definition. They use this for analysis of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. This is a group that is a part of the Mid-Region Council of Governments. And so Albuquerque would like to be a little bit more consistent with the way that we define and regulate terms like this for planning, policy, and analysis of regional studies and transportation systems. This addition provides further distinction for what might be called greenfield development of undeveloped sites, which are typically at the edge of the city, versus infill, which is encouraged and tied to the centers and corridors vision. I'd like to point out in this video series, anything that's highlighted in gray is covered by a separate video. These come from council services, and they have prepared a similar video like this that discuss the changes shown in gray. You can access those videos on the city's project website at abc-zone.com. And if you search for the 2020 IDO annual update, you'll find the webpage and links to all of these videos. The next change is on page 523. And what's proposed to change is the definition for fairground. It would be revised to read an area developed for the purpose of holding fairs, circuses, or exhibitions. And the purpose of the change is that there are related uses that can but are not required to take place on a fairground. In other presentation segments, we've reviewed some of those changes. They're primarily related to use-specific standards in Part 4. So that's the first video. There's revisions to the term circus and fair, festival, or theatrical performance. The next change is on page 525, and this is to the term glare. In the second video of the series about Part 5, which is the development standards, there was a related change that added a new standard to the maintenance section of the IDO that covers this standard. So the change here would be to delete the definition of glare and in favor of adding other standards in the development standards of the IDO. And the purpose is to delete section 513A4 and move to a new section 56G5, which covers outdoor activity, and revise the language to make them all clearer and more enforceable. Got a little lost there. Okay, the next change is on page 531. This changes to the term lot line, and it is under the front lot. This would revise to add a new final sentence that reads, for the purposes of determining setback requirements on an interior lot that does not abut a street, the lot is not considered to have a front lot line. In that case, all lot lines would be considered side lot lines. The purpose of this change is to clarify how to treat lot lines if there's no front lot line, which means there's no portion of the lot that abuts a street. This situation happens in shopping centers where there are often multiple lots, some of which are in the middle and have no street frontage. In those cases, there's no need for a front setback different from the other lot lines because that building may not be addressing a street or forming the street context like the other buildings along that road. The next change is in the same section, and it's for rear lot line. This would revise the second sentence to read as follows. In the case of a lot that comes to a point at the rear lot line is established by connecting 2 points that are 10 feet from the rear point, measured along the side lot lines. And then we would add an illustration to demonstrate this measurement. This is because code enforcement were pointing out that this term defines the rear lot line in a different way in the case that the rear lot comes to a point. And they felt that the standard practice would be more consistent over time and easier to measure if we continued with the same practice of going 10 feet from the corner lot line on either side of the lot and then connecting those points. So this would change how we establish the rear lot line to return to pre-IDO practice. The next change is to the term mobile food truck. This is on page 538. This would add a new second sentence to this. Any wagon, truck, trailer, or other vehicle that is propelled by engine or motor vehicle and from which any person sells, offers for sale, or gives away food or beverages. And the new text would read, other sales or services may be allowed as specified elsewhere in this IDO. The reason for the change is that City Parks and Recreation staff requested that additional sales and services, for example, a mobile skate shop or bike repair services, to be allowed at city parks through the process of what the city regulates as a food truck. There's another related change to the use-specific standards for food trucks that allows this one exception in parks. The next change is on page 543. And this is a new term for outdoor display. It would be added alphabetically to this page, and it would read as follows. The display of retail goods outside but on the same premises, on the same property as the primary establishment. For the purposes of light vehicle sales and rental, outdoor inventory is considered to be outdoor display and not outdoor vehicle storage. The purpose of this new definition and new defined term is the outdoor display is regulated in the Old Town HPO, and it is also a component of light vehicle sales and rental that is different and separate from outdoor vehicle storage. So adding the new definition makes it a little bit more clear to people that this is a separate use. The next change is to the parking definitions that begin on page 544. The first change is to the term garage, and this will be revised as follows. A single-story structure or part of a building in a low-density residential development designed to accommodate motor vehicle parking spaces that are partially or completely enclosed, and then continues on as written in the IDO. The purpose of this change is to revise the term garage to distinguish it from parking structures, which are related to building height bonuses. And they are also more commonly used in multifamily or mixed use development projects where the term garage is used in the IDO to refer to the low density parking garage for a single vehicle typically. The next change is in the same parking definitions category. It is to add a new term for carport that would be defined as follows. A roofed structure for vehicles that is not enclosed on at least two sides. For the purposes of this IDO, carports are subject to building height maximums in the underlying zone district, but are allowed to be in required setbacks pursuant to Table 514. The purpose of the new term is that it's something that is used in the IDO, and adding a definition clarifies how carports are treated in terms of height limits and setbacks. The next change is in the same category of parking definitions. This would be to add a new term for front access garage. It would read as follows. A garage in which the garage door is angled less than 45 degrees away from the front lot line, i.e. typically the street that the primary residence faces. See also side access garage and rear access garage. This adds a definition for a term that's used in the IDO that is enforceable and distinguishable from side access and rear access garages. There are also related items that add definitions for those other types of garages. Moving on to the next one, which is the rear access garage. This is a new term defined as follows. A garage accessed from the rear lot line. See also front access garage and rear access garage. Again, this is to add a defined term for a word that's used in the IDO that's enforceable and distinguishable from side access and front access garages. And finally, in this trio of new terms, side access garage. This would be defined as follows. A garage in which the garage door is angled at least 45 degrees away from the street that the primary residence faces. The access to this garage may be from the front lot line, i.e. typically the street that the primary residence faces, or a side lot line, i.e. from an abutting street in the case of a corner lot. See also front access garage and rear access garage. This adds a definition for a term used in the IDO that's enforceable and distinguishable from rear access and front access garages. The next one, we will continue in this category of parking definitions, but this is an existing term for parking structure. So it's found on page 545. It's right here, about at the middle of the page. There's some minor changes, and it would read as follows. A multi-story structure or part of a multi-story building designed to accommodate motor vehicle parking spaces that are partially or completely enclosed, including but not limited to underground or podium parking associated with multifamily, mixed use, and/or non-residential development. The purpose of this is to revise the definition of parking structure to distinguish it from garages. Parking structures are related to the building height bonuses. The next change happens on page 547, and this is to the term porch. This would be revised as follows. A roofed structure that is not more than 50% enclosed, except for removable screens, screen doors, storm sashes, or awnings on at least two sides, that projects from the exterior wall of a building and that is used as an outdoor living area. To be considered a porch and not just part of the building, the porch facing a street must not be more than 50% enclosed, except for removable screens, screen doors, storm sashes, wrought iron security fencing, or awnings. The purpose of the change is to include anything that's within the footprint of a common roof, which could include a porch. There's a related item clarifying that porches can be in a setback, but only if it meets the definition of a porch and not just a part of the building. This revision tries to clarify the overlapping definitions. The next revision is on page 550, and this is to seasonal outdoor sales. Down here, it would be right here to just delete the word or indoor. What this does is it eliminates a contradiction of outdoor sales and general retail, which would be indoor sales. If sales happen under a common roof in a building, then the definition of the building would say those sales are happening indoor, and so they would be considered general retail. The next change that we will speak to is on page 559. And this is to the term structure. It's right here. This would read, anything constructed or erected above ground level that requires location on the ground or attached to something having a location on the ground, but not including a tent, vehicle, vegetation, trash can, bench, picnic table, or public utility pole or line. The new content is swimming pools are considered structures, whether above ground or in ground. The reason for this new addition is that swimming pools are described elsewhere in the IDO as accessory structures. There are other related revisions in Table 514 about where swimming pools can be located and required setbacks. They are still required to be at least 5 feet from the property line. The next change is on page 564. And the term is vehicle definitions. This first change would delete the word non-commercial vehicle. And the reason for this change is that throughout the IDO, there are amendments proposed related to parking of light vehicles and heavy vehicles in section 55F. And light vehicle and heavy vehicles are defined separately. These changes are addressed in more detail in Exhibit 55, and there will be a separate presentation that covers those changes. The next change is on page 565. This is to the term heavy vehicle right about here. And the proposal is to delete vehicles. Add a new second sentence as follows. This use does not include any vehicle that meets the definition of a distinct vehicle in the IDO, including but not limited to recreational vehicle. And this change is so that we eliminate overlap in definitions. The first change is to clean up this text that says a vehicle, vehicles. So we would just delete the second word. The next change is on page 569. And this is to the front yard definition, which is right here. So that would read, the part of a lot from the front lot line to any front facade of the primary building. Extend it to both side lot lines. See also lot definition. So this is the front of the building, extend it to the side lot lines. And that defines this as the front lot area. The proposal is to add a new second sentence that reads, if there is no primary building on the lot, the part of the lot within the minimum setback in that zone district on the side of the lot where the property will be addressed. So in this diagram, this would be the front street, the site accesses, and you would measure back the minimum front setback, which could be 0 feet, 5 feet, 10 feet, 15 feet. And that entire area would be considered the front yard, whether or not there's a building. What this does is helps us understand how tall walls and fences are allowed to be because they're tied to front yard versus other parts of the yard. If there's no building that's proposed, then this front yard definition is pretty problematic. So this kind of gives you a way to understand what the front yard area is if there's no building. The next change applies throughout the IDO. Just wanted to say again, these changes in gray highlighted cells, those are covered in a separate presentation that's posted on the abc-zone.com website. These are related to council services amendments, and council services staff explain that in a separate video. I'll continue on with these last two that apply throughout the IDO. This one is to make any necessary clerical corrections to the document, including fixing typos, numbering, and cross-references. So we've seen a few in the spreadsheet, and any others we come across, we will fix. And the purpose is to cover general clerical corrections. And the last one is to make any necessary editorial changes to the document, including minor text additions, revisions for clarity, without changing a substantive content, adding cross-references, reorganizing content for better clarity and consistency throughout, revisions to graphic content for clarity, and updating tables of contents. And this covers the general editorial corrections. I do want to say that the editorial corrections and all of these other changes will be footnoted in the draft version so that we can see all the changes that have been as the current version, which is dated November 2020, is updated to reflect these new latest annual updates. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation.